This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven. And this is in fact episode 4 of the Kitchen Garden mini-series. And the idea of this series is to give you, in a nugget, the vegetables that I think are completely invaluable to grow. Well, not the vegetables, the sort of edibles. In the last episode, I did my favourite herbs. And in this episode, I'm doing my favourite salads. And as ever with me, all my dogs just arrived. Hello, Dusty. I've divided their favourite salads between August and April April till August. And my life would be a much lesser thing if I couldn't go outside and pick my own salads every single day of the year. And I mean that in that we tend to think salad, Caesar salad, crunchy cos lettuce, it's a summer thing. But I really passionately believe it isn't. And the more I read about nutrition, whether it's Tim Spector or Jessie and Japowski with the glucose goddess, the more I know that my instinct, which is that salad is good for us every day of the year, is absolutely right. And if you read Jessie's book on glucose, one of her hacks, rather sort of new American word that I'm not so keen on, but one of her tips to long-term health is that the first thing you eat, ideally in any meal, including breakfast, is actually a mini salad, something raw and vegetable based, or not even raw, it could be broccoli. But what that does is it creates a kind of net in the base of your stomach and then in the base of your gut, which then means that you absorb any glucose product that you put in your mouth much more slowly, because it creates this kind of seal, not complete, but a partial seal that really slows absorption of the stuff that you don't want to absorb, which is sugar. Anyway, that apart, I happen to love salad. And so I want to have one every single day of the year. And between August and April, so at this time of year, I'm starting to think about my sort of 4 favourites. And for me, I always start a salad that I'm making. I try and make it as delicious as possible. So it's not a sort of little gem chucked in a bowl and then with some olive oil and salt and vinegar over the top. I try and think of it as having 4 ingredients if possible. And this is like a proper salad that could be a course in itself. And I'm not saying this is for breakfast, but certainly for lunch and ideally for dinner. And so I would always start with a lettuce. That would be my first ingredients. And between August and April, that would be the Merveille de 4 Saisons, the marvel of 4 seasons. And it's called that because it can grow happily in all 4 seasons. And I love it. It's quite open structured. It's got a nice kind of soft leaf, but crunchy stem. It's very beautiful. It's got a bronze colouring with a green heart. Anyone who's regularly listened to the podcast will have heard me bang on about it. But it's my favourite lettuce sowing for autumn, winter and spring, so between August and April. So that's the first ingredient in my salad bowl in the winter. The second would be something with a really strong flavour, because of course lettuce has quite a gentle flavour. And for me, that's salad rocket. And salad rocket, a variety like serrata or dentata or any of those, which have been bred from the original Asian rocket variety, they are really, really hardy. And they will grow right the way through the winter, and you can just pick the outer leaves. And if you see it running up to flower, take the heart as well, and that will then make it stop trying to bolt or run up to flower, and you can then go on picking it. And between August and April, you might want to do 2 sowings. But the great thing about rocket between August and April is there's no flea beetle. And flea beetle are those pesky little tiny beetles that look like a black pinhead but hop like a flea, which is why it's called flea beetle. So it is a beetle but hops like a flea, and they pepper all your brassica leaves with tiny little holes so that they actually, between May and August, can just leave almost no green left. It's more like lace. You don't have those at this time of year. The third plant, which actually I talked about, banged on about quite a lot in episode 3, is flat leaf parsley, and it's completely hardy. But I would always add a herb into my salad, or perhaps chopped up and put into my dressing for the salad. And I really try and do that as the third ingredient in any salad. And the fourth thing, I would add something with a bit of oomph, a bit of substance to it. And between August and April, for me, that would be bulb fennel. And that is a sort of classic. You see it in Italian markets all the time, and it's becoming much more available in this country. And the funny thing is, again, because we associate it, bulb fennel, with the Mediterranean, it's sometimes called Florence fennel, actually, and it is used a lot in Italy. But we think, Mediterranean, perhaps it's, a hot climate plant, and it likes the hot months, but actually it doesn't. You want to sow it in July or August to harvest it through the autumn, and then you want to sow it again in September, October to harvest it if you've got anywhere under cover like a cold frame or greenhouse, to harvest it through the winter. If you sow it in March and April when you're sowing a lot of other things, it's trying to bulb at the hottest moment of the year, and it then bolts, not bulbs. So it's one of the things that's much better from August to April than it is from April to August. So then moving on to the second, a sort of 6-month section of the year, from April to August, you have a different lettuce, but it's the same idea that you've got your salad bowl, you're starting with a lettuce, you're moving on to a salad leaf, you're then moving on to a herb to give wonderful flavour, and then you're moving on to something to give substance or perhaps beauty, which between April and August, I'm going to concentrate on the beauty. So for my lettuce, I'm going to go for the really crunchy, wonderful variety called Reine de Glace, Queen of Ice. And it's actually called that, rather like Merveille de Quatre Saisons. It has in its name the right implication that it's in fact pretty hardy, Queen of Ice. So you can sow and grow it pretty much all year, but we find here we get the nicest plants from sowing in April and harvesting it from sort of late May onwards and June and July. And then we'll do a second sowing in June to harvest until the end of August. So lettuce, Reine de Glace or Queen of Ice is my number one base for my summer salad bowls. Instead of salad rocket, which hails from Asia, I'm going to move on to wild rocket, which is a Mediterranean wild plant that hails from Turkey and Greece. And it's actually one of the classic things that you'll see people harvesting beside the road to put into their salad. And it's totally heat tolerant. So you can cut it to the ground. It's a short-lived perennial, or not quite to the ground, perhaps an inch above the ground, and just give it a shear, and then lovely new fresh leaves will come again, and cut and cut and cut and cut again. It's just the most wonderful plant. You sow it in March or April to then harvest right the way through, but you've got to hack it right back regularly, even if you're not going to eat it, because perhaps it might have a bit of flea beetle damage, because it is in the brassica family, it is a rocket. Then feed it to your chickens or put it on your compost heap or put it in your compost bin, but cut it back, because then you get lovely, fresh, more gentle flavoured leaves. So that would be my second, which is wild rocket. My third, instead of flat leaf parsley, for April to August, I'm going French tarragon. It's my favourite herb in the whole wide world. Absolutely adore it. And it's wonderful in dressings. And it's wonderful just chopped roughly and chucked as a leaf into a salad. And so you get this lovely burst of aniseedy freshness, just like you do from the bulb fennel in the August to April bowl. You get it from French tarragon in the April to August bowl. So I really passionately recommend it, and it's easy to grow in quite poor soil with quite good drainage. So the final touch for your April to August bowl would be dahlia petals. Every part of the dahlia is edible. I don't particularly like eating the tubers, but I do love scattering the petals over food. And the best food of all to have a dahlia petal, a multicoloured handful of sort of dahlia petal confetti is over a huge bowl of salad, because it just brings it to life. And it doesn't taste particularly very much, but it looks absolutely wonderful. So favourite salad for beginners, I would say August to April, lettuce, merveille de quatre saisons. Next, salad rocket to give you flavour. Next, flat leaf parsley to give you freshness. Next, bulb fennel to give you substance. From April to August, lettuce, render glace to give you crunch and lovely, lovely sweetness. Next, wild rocket to give you pepper. Next, French tarragon to give you fresh bursts of aniseedy flavour. And finally, dahlia petals to give you pizzazz. So there be it, episode 4 of the Kitchen Garden mini-series. And next episode, I'm going to do the same for my favourite veg. So which are the ones that I would be bereft without between August and April, i.e. now, and between April and August. So see you then. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.